tene tatanda tango chenamba kankala ngadu dele hyujutan tene tijisla ngaransu chen batarto doji chonto me sonde dangi ore la tene tikapso tene jay ngaransu tambe chu nyans lembe kasala certo tambe chu ta te nane mixalto tene jipela matamche la debaton muguchi ne sorwa tapate pe karchewa re la tene tetab karchewa te ya tene chitang debaton muguchi patsa maimba debaton muguti ye na tene tambe chu nyanselemba la troyo tene tambe chu nyanselemba la troyo na tene te la zendru zendru chenpochi chona tene te la tene drebu topa tene tege junre kinderwa yeba yimbe chirna tene debato muguchi jude kalchegre la tene dojin chontuma dembe kapsula debata muguchi naruchi.
First of all, Rinpoche would like to wish everyone good morning. And then we will recite the short Vajradhara lineage prayer as usual. And as we do this, it is important that we generate faith and devotion in the true Dharma, and also in the lineage lamas. And this is not just for the sake of faith and devotion, but rather because if we have faith and devotion, then we will be excited about Dharma practice. And if we are excited about our Dharma practice, then we will be diligent. And if we are diligent, then we will attain the results. And so in this way, there's a cause and effect relationship, a cause and result relationship among these. And so therefore, it is very important to generate the faith and devotion for that reason. And so please keep that in mind while we chant the Dorje Chang lineage prayer.
Tene ta kasinga truly Gerdo Lamhira Japaru Tsimba Hebe Gap Yimba Jaitan Lamhira Japaru Tsimba Lang Keprasave Ne Truk Yebe Nan Ne Ta Tangbo Pumbo Lang Kepatan Nipa Kom Lang Kepatan Tene Nipa Jenchi Lang Kepatan Sumba Kom Lang Kepa Sumde Husimba La Ta Di Kapsu Yiva Tendelang Kepate Hugo Yore La Tene Yore.
To pick up where we left off yesterday, we are discussing path transcendent full knowing. And we are discussing path transcendent full knowing through the 6 ways of being skillful. Of the 6 ways of being skillful, yesterday we covered skill in the aggregates, skill in the sense spaces or ayatans, and skill in the elements or dhatus. And so today we have the 4th, skill in training and skill in interdependence.
Tene ta teya ta chitanga ondse na tene pumbo ta jenchi ta kom tenzo ta tandig no ande ne tang da botan ta chi no ta nang hip korte hubarela ta yiba tender de ta che chitanga ta tanda hiraja paru dusimbe nane tenjin drevarin juma no ate Tietarto Madupa, Ngotombani, Batembati, Tai Yerjapache, Yerjaparete. Yinayan Kunzo Tendrigo on the Siena, Tinite, Tangpo, Jitinje, Conson Korwande, Jokande, Sin, Trugi Yabata. Tinite Latine, Tati no and the Harwig Sultan. Tati no and the Harwig Capso, Tatanda, Tandi. No and the Charne, Tietomji, some chin roger maiba. The Mahon Palayan, Tine, Tanda, Tarji, Tombichu, Nyamsalemba, Majuna, Korwan Tame Bebardula, and Tendrich and Colon Cornroji by Jaitan. Tene, Tejan the Chunig and Nelu he, Nyamsalon. Telan Devo top na, the net and Junik and Colo de Rankinki, Hate Roju, but Ninkorvedungal de Rankinki, Troll Roju, but the temperature to la, the net and Juni de Nangiore.
In the discussion of the aggregates, sense spaces, and elements, what we are discussing is the way that samsara appears, so the way that the confused appearances of samsara are. And then, so what follows that is the discussion of interdependence, because this talks about how the appearances arise in interdependent origination. So how the appearances arise in interdependent origination. Now, of course, in terms of the ultimate, these links of interdependence do not have any true existence. They are emptiness. However, in terms of how things appear, the appearances do arise in interdependent origination, in dependence upon one another. And so it is important to understand how these appearances arise in dependence upon one another. And so for that reason, we need to study how they arise in interdependent origination. If the appearances just arose and then there was a limit to it, that would be one thing. But it's not like that. Rather, if we do not practice the true Dharma, then these appearances through the cycle of interdependent origination will continue and continue in an unending cycle throughout unending samsara. However, if we have the opportunity to practice the Dharma and to realize the Dharma nature as it is, then the cycle of interdependence will naturally be broken. And we will then be freed from all of the sufferings of samsara. And so for that reason, it is very important that we know how these cycles of interdependence work.
Tene ta teyan ta tanda ndoi cheke ondu sena maripa sepa me pa ne gahi sepa pardo yo me to somarela. Tene teyan ta kasenge cheke tru sena tene ta tanda jitang chuni ge nelu tene madrupa mahimpa tembe chertu ta tomba nila zukme hibate rela tomba nila zukme tomba nila chorwa me se ta te tembaran zeba yendo kapndariya tomba nila mariba me tomba nila mariba sepa me pa ne tomba nila gahi me tomba nila gahi sepa pardo yo me to sunga taba ta te tomba ni jingon to tendri juni gen korlo te madupar temba ta te tomba ni te ta chik ngoten gen to sena tene me pa mahimpa tene dewarhi be nimbo sentin tangje la ranchi su yupa te la te ngo la maripa te madrupa ta baje yimbe cherna maripa ta tendri juni de madrupa yimba tembe ki chetula ta tanda tende sungare.
In terms of the words of the sutra, it reads, there is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance up to no old age and death, and also up to no exhaustion of old age and death. And so this is actually similar to the teaching on the aggregates that we had yesterday, where it read, therefore in emptiness there is no form. So in the explicit words of the sutra, as we discussed yesterday, in emptiness, within this emptiness there is no form, and there is no feeling, no conception, and so forth. And so in the same way, here it is, in emptiness there is no ignorance, in emptiness there is no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, so on and so forth, up to in emptiness there is no old age and death, and in emptiness there is no cessation or exhaustion of old age and death. And so here this is teaching that, is explicitly teaching that this is in emptiness. So the emptiness is specifically taught separately here. And so this shows that the emptiness is our Buddha nature. It is so the so within that, so that emptiness is our Buddha nature, and within that Buddha nature, there is no ignorance, and there are none of the other links of interdependence.
Ta tela cherdo tendri juni pa jeta tendri juni tela ya lunjung khorwe tendri se ta tangbo tsawa mari pa ti ye na teni tela duji ye pa duji ye na namhi ye pa la so pa ta te tsawa khoran ye na teni chasang te khorun kholo ti yungi ye pa jeta jeta ludo nyangi lende pe tendri se teni mari pa ngana tene duhi me pata duji me na namhi me pa la so pa tendri juni de ranging ki tene yalro ate ludu nyangelen de tendel se sungi war la ta chek rang on de se na maripa ni ta gahi patuli tang koron koloti yungi yoba jeta kalte maripa ngana gahi me pata gahi sepe pardo sunga tabu da konzo tendri ke no ate yungi yore la teni ten tambe nelu go on de chena lunjung khorwe tendri ya rangi ji matu pa yimba ta ludo nyangelen de pe tendri na ya rangi ji matu pa yimba ta tende sungi sare.
In the links of interdependence, there are two ways that they progress. And the first of these is the the order of progression of samsara. So there's the order of progression of samsara in which first you have ignorance, and then because you have ignorance, you have formation, and then because of that you have consciousness, etc., all the way up to the link of aging and death. And so if you have one, then the next one follows. And this is the cycle through which samsara happens. And so this is the forward, or the order of progression of samsara. So the order of progression of samsara is the first way. In Tibetan, this is called the luk chung, for those of you who know that term. And then there is what is called the blocked order, or the reversed order of, or the order of reversing of nirvana. So the order of reversing of nirvana is that if you can stop the branch of ignorance, then the link of ignorance, then the link of formation will not arise, and so on and so forth. So each one is blocked up to that also ends up blocking aging and death. And so in this way, by reversing or blocking one, you block all of the, blocking the first, then you block all of them all the way up to aging and death. And so this is the order of reversing of nirvana. And so here what we have are these two different orders in the relative level. The order of the order of progressing in samsara, and the order of reversing in nirvana. And so for the order of progressing in samsara, it goes one link after the other up to old age and death. And if we block one link, then it blocks every other link up to aging and death for the the order of reversing of nirvana. But these here it says in the sutra that there is no ignorance, and so no ignorance is the first of the links of the order of the progression of samsara, and so this and then it says there. But there is none of this in the true nature. In the absolute nature, there is no ignorance, and so there is no forward progression of the links of samsara. And in the same way, because there is no forward progression of the links of samsara, there is also no order of the reversal of nirvana.
Tene ta tela yang ta zawa ta tenri juni lunjung khurbe tenri ke on de na tene zawa maripa singente ta jitang mombare tene ta tin khurbe zawa te maripa imbata tang khurbe dunghal de pon se pala maripa ti pangku ke pa indu tene maripa te tangbo tembare la tene maripa singente mombare mihibar mihibe mombate la ngo khandite la ngo zungu yore se na ta tanda jesun taranatha kongri ke gombatar je onte se na maripa la chitang number ye yore maripa number ye te tangbo te lendre la momba maripa ta jai nimba te denje la momba maripa ta ni sumba te tudala momba maripa ta som yeba te dehi nimbu ngo mihibe maripa ta number ye tembare la tene ta te yang ta te ge netang kare yimba te salpur mahipa la tene korwar tulbare la tene ta te na ne tangpo tene tangpo lende la momba maripa tene ti dengue la momba maripa ta tene tanda tuda la momba maripa ta dehi nimbo la momba maripa ta somte tanda te khona ni la mahiba la tene trubare tene lende la momba maripa te nekap ke lende la somahini trubare la ta tige korwe zawa te kandre ke sege yore se na ta maripa momba namba hibo te sege yore
The first of the links of interdependence in terms of the order of the progression of samsara. The first of the links of interdependence in that order is ignorance. And so by ignorance, what we mean is delusion, the delusion of unknowing. So that is what we mean by ignorance. And it is the first link because it is like the root of all the confusion of samsara. And so because it is the root of all the confusion of samsara, it is the first link. And so this is the root, this is the first link, ignorance, which is delusion, the delusion of unknowing. And in this delusion of unknowing, it is not knowing the way things actually are. And so here, in terms of the thought of Jetsun Taranatha, in terms of the thought of the Venerable Taranatha, there are said to be 4 different types of ignorance. These 4 different types of ignorance are delusion about karma, cause, and effect. The second type is delusion about the 4 noble truths. The third is delusion about the unelaborate, that which is not elaborated, the unelaborated. And the fourth is ignorance about the Buddha nature, the ignorance of not knowing the Buddha nature. I will repeat these for you. The first of these 4 ignorances is the ignorance or the delusion about karma, cause, and effect. The second is the delusion about the 4 noble truths. The third is the delusion about the unelaborate, the unfabricated. And the fourth is the ignorance of not knowing the Buddha nature. And so these 4 all are different ways of not knowing how things are. And because of not knowing how things are, then we are temporarily confused into samsara. And so that propels us into the confusion of samsara. So of these 4 different types of samsara, they can also be divided into 2 sets. And so the first set of this is just the confusion or the delusion of not knowing karma, cause, and effect. That is the first group. And then there is the second group, which has the other 3. And so this is the confusion of not knowing thatness. So the confusion of not knowing thatness has as its different types. It has the confusion of not knowing the 4 noble truths, the delusion of the unelaborate, and the delusion about Buddha nature. So those 3 all are contained within the confusion, the delusion about thatness. So the first type of ignorance, the confusion about karma, cause, and effect, is just a delusion about not knowing how things work. And that causes us to do actions that propel us into the confusion of samsara.
Tene ta te ya marikpa tangbo ta lende la mo marikpa te ta chitang ke tene le gewa chenan devu dewa yepa hamago wata mahipa gewa khande so goge yepa mahipa tene dipa megewa chenan devu dunga khande junge yepa mahipa kang dipa megewa yimba yo nguma simpa mahipa ta mo patela ta ti kunzup ko mo patela goge yo la tene ti kunzup ko mo pate lende la mo mari pate kandi ki sab ki yo re sena tusom ki hera la tene sab ko yo ta ti sanji je ndoda sanji ji sumbe ka tene kepa tong toto tong ji sombe tenju tenzo la njal tenzo la tuba se tenzo la samba se na tene lejundi la ichiche ne ta lejundi yang ta ba nyam ne ji to ba tene khalte lejundi la mo ba te sal ma thut na tene ngesong to jewe jo se ge yo re so re la ta ti lejundi ti yapo ma so ma hipa la tene ngesong ke ne su je ta tinde yung ge yo re la tene junsin teacher na 다 가생에 몇 걸은다고 휴바래 라 되네 다 περ나 투투당 갑슬라 냐세야 데베 야 되네 데 미게와 임바 되네 다데 나란초 당비 주다 만팀바 임바 다 딘데 임발라 다 팔치위게 저승 야보난게 요아레데 이나야 다 현도 제랑 다 단다 주지바 소수게 포포모레 딘 로춘춘레 딘 대현도 당 오히바레 니히레 솔레이나야 베콜은다보 나나 딘 디게 렌데라 몬바데 칸데 용게 요아레세나 딘 냐르다보 텐조 딘 촐촐라네 베카살라 다 코란솔라 데지 칸데 용게 야바 마히바 딘 초니 컴나 템베카솔라 둥할 칸데 야바 마히바 딘 텔라테니 소체 베카솔라 둥할 칸데 야바 마히바 딘 다 데타브제 임베처나 다데 타보 딘 레전디라 라니 tarjute ta kalchimburese ten khasin tagase yarda hyola bekolra bu hiparela ten teriya ti junsen da bota tin de da bochire.
So the first of the types of ignorance, the ignorance as to karma, cause and effect, is basically not knowing that practicing virtue leads to happiness, and not knowing what it means to practice virtue. Likewise, and so therefore not knowing how to practice virtue. And likewise, it also means not knowing that doing misdeeds and evil things leads to suffering, not recognizing what the misdeeds are. Or misdeeds or harmful actions, it's sometimes translated as. Not recognizing what the misdeeds are, not knowing that one should avoid them. And so this is the sort of ignorance that causes one to be born in the lower realms, it is said. And so here, what we need to do in order to counteract that, or in order to remedy that sort of ignorance, is to engage in the practices of listening and contemplation. And so we need to listen and contemplate to the sutras and to the treatises which explain how karma, cause, and effect work, and explain that if you do virtuous actions, you will have a happy result, a pleasant result. If you do non-virtuous misdeeds, then you will have an unhappy result, an unpleasant result in the lower realms. And so it is important to study those and to contemplate that meaning, to come to understand that meaning in order to contemplate that sort of ignorance about karma, cause, and effect. It is this karma, cause, and effect that causes one to be born in the lower realms. So it is important to study that well and to through listening and contemplating. Now, yesterday in Rinpoche's talk, he exhorted us all to avoid going fishing on our days off and going fishing on vacations. And he explained he explained about it, but this is what gives us the reason for it. It is this explanation that gives us the reason for why he was exhorting us not to go fishing and not to go going. The reason is that when people go fishing, first of all, we do not really know what sort of pleasures the fish have in the water, nor do we really know what sort of suffering they have when they're yanked out of the water, and what sort of suffering they have when they are killed. And it is through not knowing that that we do the misdeed of fishing. And so, therefore, it is very important that we know this, and it is important that we know it for ourselves. And since you all are also Dharma practitioners, it is also important. It's important for yourselves, but it is also important for other people who might not know. There might be young boys and girls, or neighbors, or family members, or other people who do not really know about the problems of fishing and the amount of suffering that it causes the fishes. So it is important it is important to try to tell them and to try to help them understand the meaning of karma, cause, and effect so that they will not engage in such actions as fishing. And so yesterday Rinpoche gave the exhortation not to go fishing. And today in this part, he is explaining the reasons for that.
Tene ta te jendo ta tanda nipate dengi la mon parela tene ta te dengi nelu mahina korwale targeo mare la tan korwale matarwati ta tanda je dungal dembaton kunjung dembaton gop dembaton lamji dembege netan rabote mahipala tene korwale matarwa tate dengi la mombata je tene tate gindo toni la mombata ni dehi himbo la mombate momba nomba som de kandi se pangku yore sena tu som se pa som ji pangtu yore wona kandi pangku yore sena gomjung ki hera la tin pangku yore la tene gomjung ki hera che pe kapso tene perna demba ke gonggu yore demba ke gomba de ta zo tene terawada glusola demba ke gonggu yore la tene ngaranso ke tanda songho doji tipi la tene den ke gomba de yapore de ina ya rang susu tumo maimbe mengo de nyomne se pe kapsola tene den ke de ra gonggu yo mare la tene teacher na tanda kitang ngala nguma tene tanda research che nyung ken che ke tang nyong la tene tanda mutapa gombe kapsala tene terawada la yena tene kechi ki njurwan rowe duzi ji ngopo tenzo kechi ki njurwan ro tong ke korla gomja ya yore tene te ngaranzo songho doji tipe la te gong yo mare la te karire si tene twa nang song la tene te la ngarang ge hep to tachi se pe kapsala tene cherdo matapa la thawa kechi ke matapa da rapa jenje matapa ni yore la tene ti na ne ngaranzo songho doji tipe ge ta tanda lodo namba ye na ne tene tata matapa chiwa matapa gongki yore la tika so la thawa kechi ke matapa de gongki yo mare ragba jenje matapa de gongki yore tene tela terawada ge luso la thawa kechi ke matapa de gongki yore ta teni gomba khakhari imbe junsen te tene gupa khakhari la tene te terawada ge luso la demba ge nelu gomne da me ba to pisi to thawa kechi ki matapa de gongki yore ti menga de nangi yore la ngaranso songho doje tipi ge on de siena matapa gomba te neka thambi chula kol ne tene khorwala ninjung jewe ki chertu tene matapa ji gongki yore mato neka long ngu te la tene tanda ta chuni ke ne lu gamba te zor na wa yin bichna tene thawa kechi ki matapa te gongki yo mare neka matapa korwal nginjung ji wi chet chula kulma yong wi chet la rapa jinji matapa te gongki yo.
The second type of ignorance is the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. And so the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths is not knowing how the Four Noble Truths are. If we do not really know how the Four Noble Truths are and what they are, then we cannot free ourselves from the cycle of samsara. And so in order to free ourselves from the cycle of samsara, we must meditate upon the way that the Four Noble Truths are and to understand them well. Now, for the four, in terms of meditating on the delusion as to the Four Noble Truths, and the delusion as to emptiness, the delusion as to the empty. Excuse me. Let me start that again. I got a little distracted. In terms of dispelling the delusion about the Four Noble Truths, and in terms of dispelling the delusion about emptiness, which is another way of saying the delusion about the unelaborate, and in terms of dispelling, in order to dispel the delusion about the Buddha nature, it is not enough just to practice listening and contemplating. Rather, we need to practice we need to do the meditation. We actually need to abandon that delusion through meditation. It is only by meditation that we can abandon that delusion. Now, when we are now, in the Theravada tradition, they meditate upon the Four Noble Truths. They do a direct meditation upon the Four Noble Truths. And this is very good. This is excellent. It's a wonderful meditation and very beneficial. But in the secret mantra Vajrayana, we don't particularly do that meditation. Although it is very good, we have the own particular instructions in the secret mantra Vajrayana tradition. So rather than meditating upon the nature of the Four Noble Truths, we meditate upon the Dharma nature, or the way that the Dharma nature is. And so that is the tradition of the secret mantra Vajrayana, to meditate on the Dharma nature and not to meditate so much on the Four Noble Truths. Now, there was once someone who asked Rinpoche a question about this. And the reason he asked the question is that in the Theravada tradition, they meditate upon the Four Noble Truths, and they meditate upon this by meditating upon the impermanence, the subtle impermanence of everything changing from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. Everything always changing in every moment, so every phenomenon being momentary, and through that way they meditate upon the Four Noble Truths. And yet in the secret mantra Vajrayana tradition, we don't particularly meditate upon that momentary impermanence, but rather when we meditate upon impermanence, we meditate upon death and impermanence. So what is the reason for that, this person asked? And Rinpoche gave an answer to this. And in the answer, he thought about it and he analyzed it and he looked at it carefully. And when he looked at it carefully, he thought that there are two different ways of meditating upon impermanence here, because there are two different needs or two different reasons for meditation, two different reasons for doing the meditation. In the Theravada tradition, the primary way of meditating is to view one's own is to view all phenomena and see them as being momentary, changing from moment to moment to moment, in order to see that there is no self. So, in other words, in order to realize selflessness, they meditate upon the momentary nature of the five aggregates. And this is in order to realize the selflessness of the individual. However, in the secret mantra Vajrayana, our main meditation is on the nature, on the way the Dharma nature is. And so rather than meditating upon the momentariness of the momentariness of the aggregates, when we meditate upon impermanence, we meditate upon what we call coarse impermanence. So there are two types of impermanence here. There's the subtle impermanence of all phenomena changing from moment to moment to moment to moment. And there is the coarse impermanence of things. And so the subtle impermanence is the impermanence that the Theravadas meditate upon. But we meditate upon the coarse impermanence in order to remember about death. And so when we meditate upon the four thoughts that turn the mind, also called the four reminders, when we meditate upon the four thoughts that turn the mind, then we meditate upon death and impermanence as a way to encourage us and to make us more diligent in our Dharma practice. And so there is a different need for meditating upon impermanence in the two traditions.
ngaranso ge songho doji ti belola ta tanda Dengila Mompa Maripati, Mixal Pong Richatula, Teniamlin Angio Marella, Yinaya, Tenilong Coma Gomondu, Dengila Mompa Maripati, Ranginki, Salduiore, La. Tene ngaranso kande gongge yore kandi gi nyembo gongge yore sena tene tudal la mo mari pata dehi nyimbo la mo mari pa nyimbo de salve ge cherto ta te gongge yore la tene te ya tudal la mo mari pa se de chu tham chi tong yin do me pa yin ba la ma hi ba ta te la tene khoro chu no la dancing chu chimbo chu ne tene chu ni ge ne lu tong ba ni jing rang yin de ma to ba 되게 몸바데 다 되게 몸바 되게 간데라 드비 오래세나 되네 탐지 쳔부 공pon을 드비 오래라 다디 뚜들 몸바 마리바데 마살나 되네 다르투 근데부 산지지 공pon데 토기요 말해라 되네 다 디처나 추탐지 동니 뚜들도 때나 바바데 다 우마니 템베 동니데 대다 다 대히 힘볼라 뭐 마리파티 테네 다 단다 뚜들디 히나야 뚜들 똥바니 징오디 테네 살와이 히치나 바탄 템바 데워히 비 힘보이에 바 마히나 테네 타르투 산지지 옌테 차창와 토바텔라 테네 드브기 와달라 테네 준신 티처나 다 단다 렘지 송주 셈벨 람라 효나 데니 동보 동찬니 추지 예 살찬니 데워히 비힘붕오데 검네 데니 마리파데 뽕어세바 시고기 요아렐라 다 데타부게 데히 힘부 랑히 히바다 뚜르 동니 히바다 데히 네루 히발라소바 메나 당 코르왈란 트르베기 조 마리베 몽바데 마독바인 비쳤나데 텐리주니 데랑히 긴중기 요아레
So in the secret mantra Vajrayana tradition, we do not meditate particularly or specifically in order to abandon the delusion about the Four Noble Truths. But when we meditate upon the higher paths, the paths of when we meditate upon the higher paths, then this delusion is naturally blocked and naturally abandoned. And so, in the secret mantra of Vajrayana tradition, what we primarily meditate upon is we primarily meditate upon the antidotes for the delusion about the unelaborate, the delusion about emptiness, and the antidote for the delusion about Buddha nature. And so, for these, the delusion about the delusion about the unelaborate here is the delusion not knowing that all things are empty and selfless. And by not knowing that all things are empty and selfless, we have great attachment and clinging to all these phenomena, and because we have attachment and clinging to various phenomena, we end up cycling through the confusion of samsara. And so, what is it that this delusion primarily obscures? What does it prevent us from attaining? This delusion primarily obscures us from attaining the state of the omniscient one. In other words, it's attaining Buddhahood. So so it is something that we meditate upon in the path of the Bodhisattva in order to free ourselves from this delusion about emptiness, the delusion about the unelaborate nature, and in that way we can attain the state of Buddhahood. Then there is also the delusion of not knowing the Buddha nature. And so what this is that even if we recognize and are certain about the unelaborate, empty nature of all phenomena, if we do not recognize the essence of wisdom that is in that, then we will be unable to fully develop all of the qualities of Buddhahood. And so in order to develop all of the quality, to fully develop all of the qualities of Buddhahood, we need to overcome this delusion about the delusion of not knowing the Buddha nature. And so for that reason, during the path of the Bodhisattva, we meditate to overcome both of these delusions. We meditate on the antidotes for both of these delusions. And so the antidote for the delusion about the unelaborate is the, excuse me, I got that order wrong. The aspect of emptiness, is the excuse me. So in order, yes, that's it. Okay, so in order to meditate upon this, we meditate upon the empty and the clear aspects of our Dharma nature. And the empty part is the Dharma expanse, the Dharma dhatu. And the clear part is the wisdom of the Buddha nature. And so we meditate upon both of these aspects in order to fully develop all of the qualities of Buddhahood.
Tene ta te tabu ta pang ma thup na ta mari pa te la tene tang khoru ge chun hong ju ge chawa te ju mari pa la tene ta ten ru ju ni ge ni pa te duji yong ge yawara duji se na le la kan de yawara se na le ge wa ta me ge wa ni yawara la tene ta ti ge wa la ya chitang ge sa che tong sa mi ni ye pe na ne sa che chi ge wa se 다 소미지 개와이나 타르바도 탐지 젬페 공pon토페 개와레 소치지 개와세나 데니 단다 소치지 개와데 다 지탕게 데니 투리 플라다 메예 데와토페 조타 데니 메게와세나 녜송도 둥한뇽 존다고 제임베잖아 다디게 마릭팔레 두지 레데 인정 le la tene number hi banjang sungare le te rang sakba la tene rang number hi ba chu ji gtain do ta ti le ke zangbo sa na le zangbo sa be tene bocha te ye pata tene ti saven rabo te ya pata le ngemba sa na le ngemba sa be bocha te rimji phel ne tan roi be chirna tene tenri juni ke nani sumbati namhi Tati namhi te kandisi ni pelgi yuwa se na number hi pati rimji pacha sabante rimji pel ne tini ngara tal kiwa lengi yuwa la kiwa lembe kaso la minzu se ta tangbo sorwa nduji namhi ji pumbo te tati le sope ke pacha tong tembe ke tini sorwa nduji namhi je tini nrebu tong temba che ta tene minzo se du ji pumbo la ya ta rimji tene rang luji namba ji rimji trup ne minzu tene minzu trupa la tene rimji jinchi juni ta mai nawa na ji lu yi ji ombo te jinchi trup tene jinchi trup la tene tanda mai minzu jinchi trup rikpa te jinchi trup la tene tsiru ji yul trup te nyam su nyong la tene meki zong thong nawe da chor nai chor je ro nyong lu ji ri za nyong ye ji tene ta kun ho man ra wa je wa la so go ne tene ta ta da jin chi tu rikpa la tene ta ti rang khoru ge ne tang bo te ta chung re.
And so these are the four different types of ignorance. And if we do not reverse these, or if we do not block these four different types of ignorance, then we will wander throughout samsara, throughout the confusion of samsara. But if we do have these four types of ignorance, then what happens is we accumulate karma. And karma is what we call the link of formation. So the link of formation means karma. And there are two different types of karma here. There is virtuous karma and that leads to a pleasant result, and non-virtuous karma that leads to suffering. And so the virtuous karma there are two different types of virtuous karma. There is defiled virtuous karma and undefiled virtuous karma. Undefiled virtuous karma is not, a virtue. There are two types of virtue. There's defiled virtue and undefiled virtue. Undefiled virtue is not karma because it is the cause for attaining, is not the link of formation here because it is the cause for attaining nirvana. It is not the cause for perpetuating samsara. Rather, defiled virtue is the... I didn't say that clearly. I'm going to go back for a moment. So there are two different types of virtue. There's defiled virtue and undefiled virtue. Undefiled virtue is not the karma meant here. This is undefiled virtue is the cause for reaching nirvana. It is not the cause for continuing in samsara. Defiled virtue is the cause for defiled virtue is the cause for attaining the happiness of the higher realms, the happiness of the realms of the gods and the humans. And so there is also the non-virtue. And non-virtue is the cause for experiencing the suffering in the three lower realms. And so this is the link of formation. Now, out of this karma, then because of this karma, we take birth. And that birth, at that time that we take birth, we have at the time that we accumulate that karma, that creates latencies that happen in our consciousnesses. And so the link of formation leads to the link of consciousness. And so what happens here is that we do a virtuous action and the latencies or the habitual tendencies of it, the latencies of it are kept in our 8 consciousnesses. So we do something virtuous and it creates a latent habit that is kept in our 8 consciousnesses. Likewise, when we do something non-virtuous, that creates a latent habit that we also keep in our 8 consciousnesses. And so for this reason, this is the link of consciousness. Now, gradually, those habits, those latencies will develop, and they will cause us to take birth. And so when they cause us to take birth, when they develop and cause us to take birth, then at that point, that is the name and form, the link of name and form. And so in name and form, what we have are the 4 name aggregates. Of the 5 aggregates, the 4 that Rinpoche was calling mind the other day are also called the name aggregates. The 4 name aggregates of feeling, conception, formation, and consciousness. At the time that we take birth, the seeds that are in the 8 consciousnesses develop and become the consciousnesses of the 4 name aggregates. And then at the same time that we take birth, we also have a form aggregate that is put together. And so in this way we have the name aggregates and the form aggregates. So we have what is called name and form. And then as this develops, we have the sense bases develop. And so if we have the sense base of the eye, the sense base of the nose, the sense base of the ear, the sense base of the tongue, the sense base of the body, and the sense base of the mind, all develop. And this is the link of these 6 sense bases. And then following that, then we eventually take, then at some point the 6 sense bases all come into contact with the external forms. So this is the link of contact. And in the link of contact, then the sense base of the eye comes into contact, sees the visual form. The ear hears the sound. The nose smells a scent. The tongue tastes a flavor, and the body feels a touch, and so forth. So in this way, we have the 6 sense bases, and so these are all this is the way that we take birth into samsara.
Tene ta te ta rikpa la tene chorwa ta te daga si me gizu thongwa chom nawe da tupa za maimba meki zun thong ne yakpo jin thong na tela chayin chorwa dewa ta dupo jin thong na tela tene chorwa madewa dunghan rabo ta tende yungi yore la me nawa na je kanyi na yo jenchi thuk rikpa te la tene ta chorwa mandrawa yungi yore chorwa te nyongwa za maimba ta tela tene sepa yungi sepa te tanda tene che hidu wa je na ta ti ngarang gu gu som be desi hidu me wa je na ti gu gu mandu ta ti yapu mandu som be ke tene jisi te sepa te sem ge ten de sepa che nyemon be ke namba ta ti jewa chime ge jose ge yore la jewa chime ge jose pa la tene tong de lemba te taji ngarang ndepe ki sepa chi yo na tati ngala gugu du sompe ki tsur tongda lemba teni gugu mendu sana tati pa yu tap chi ki somnu ka teni pe na nyemong pa xedang tang chupa la sopa tabi ki lani lemba yungi yo re lemba la teni ta sepa tang lemba teni sipa ti ta sipa la teni leso pa la teni jewa chimi ki ta Tadin da buje sene jewa simala jewa ta tene gahe tene tela tene drev khandi yung yore sena tan jitin khorwala tene thama tela te dungal ge namba ta buje ma to rosa meba tene te ta buje ke ten juni de lunjung khorwe tendel se ta te ta bute ludu nyangin de tendel to tangaran so ge te lule do ne 다티 거루 둥할때 빵국이 와라라 둥할때 빵 투기 와르 베스나 빵 투기 와레 다티 네탄테 차상지 하코네 네탄테 차상지 하코나 다 자와 가나 투도 와레세나 티네 단다 콘도 헤바타도 자와 마리팔 투도 와레라 자와 마리파티 거 마톱나 다티 둥할때 진치 메바 용게 여바 데이터 자와 마리파티 까나 드니 텔라 땡ning 코르 춘노 차상데 ngot 바다보지 용기 요르 nengo 안다보데 다 텔 투기 요르라 드니 준신 티처나 단다 ngaran초게 마리파 뻥베게 탑데 간디난게 요르세나 드니 다 단다 제 ngaran초 다 mengo go on to sena songo doji tipi chu nyam ne nang yo la songo doji tipa la ya ta cherem gamba gong yo re yiram de la cherem gong yo re yiram de la cherem gamba ti zorem yapo je yung ge tap da bo je la cherem gong yo re ta ti nguni ge mengo ngoma de kandire sena zorem ta shaja chimbu ge mengo to zopa chimbu ge mengo ten zo gom yundu de la teni ti tombo tingenzeng gambala teni tudala momba mari pasel ya dehi nimbola momba mari pasel sel ne tangbo thupasi pala teni tudala momba mari pa khandi sel gu gi yapata hako teni dejendo dehi nimbola lobjon sine dehi nimbola momba mari pa khandi sel gu gi yapata hako teni te tiga teni mari pa nimbo te langsung thupa sepa la teni pangthuk yo arbe sine pangthuk yo mare te ina yo gambi nyamsu nyon na teni dehi nimbu nelu chetawa yindo todu dehi nimbo la mo mari pa te pangthupa tuidal je nelu de chasang je to yondu teni tuidal la mo mari pa te sal ro yin bichna teni mari pa te sal thuk yo
When we have contact, we have feelings that arise. And these feelings, when they arise, it's not just a blank, we have the experience of, when these feelings arise, then we have experience of seeing something nice, and we have an experience that's pleasurable, or we have an unpleasant experience, and so that leads to, or we have a bad object, and that leads to an unpleasant feeling. So we have a pleasurable object, and that leads to a pleasurable feeling. And we have kind of an unpleasant object, and that leads to an unpleasant feeling. And so we have the link of feeling here is the pleasant and unpleasant feelings and all the other sorts of feelings that arise based upon contact with an object. Now, when we have a feeling, we have craving that arises from that. We have a good feeling, and we want more of it. We have so we see a nice object, and we feel it and have a pleasurable feeling, and then we have a craving for more of it. And so this is what is called the craving of desire. And then when we see a not nice object, when we see a yucky object, then I'm trying to think of the right word. When we see a bad object, then at that point we feel an unpleasant feeling, and we want to get rid of it. And so we have what is called the craving of destruction, wanting to get rid of things. And so we have pleasant feelings that arise, and we want more of them. And then we have unpleasant feelings, and we want to put them away and get them away. And that is also a sort of craving. When we have anger or hatred or anything like that arise, we want to get rid of something. That is also craving. And then at that point, when we have that craving arise, we actually want to do something. And so we have grasping. Grasping to get that object, or to push it away. If it is something that is pleasurable, then we want it for ourselves, and we try to grasp it for ourselves. If it is something that makes us angry or hatred, then we want to push it away. And so that is also grasping. And because of that grasping, we have the link of becoming, and that is doing the karma that will create the next life. And so we have a pleasurable object, we grasp for it, and then we do an action that then we perform karma out of the. Then we perform karma out of the afflictions, and that leads us to our next life. And so that is the link of becoming. And then we take birth. So that is the link of birth, taking birth because of that. Then after taking birth, we have the link of aging and death. Aging and death is all the experience of suffering that we have. And so in this way, all of the different experiences of suffering that we have come up through these 12 links of interdependence in the order of the progression of samsara. And then there are also these 12 links of interdependence, the order of the reversal of nirvana. So reversing them. We might wonder, is there a way to stop this cycle? Can we stop the cycle of interdependence? And the answer is yes, we can. There is a way to do that. We can actually stop the cycle at some point and keep it from progressing. And so when we stop the cycle, if we can stop the cycle, then we will be freed ourselves from. Then we will free ourselves from nirvana. We will reverse the progression. So we will free ourselves from samsara. We will reverse the progression. And so this is the order of the reversal of nirvana. And so here we have. So how is it that we can reverse this progression or reverse or stop the progression of the 12 links of interdependence? The way we can reverse it is by figuring out what is it that it really comes down to. What is it that is the very root and base that all of samsara comes down to? It is ignorance. It is the 4 types of delusion that we described before. And so we need to block. If we can block this delusion, if we can block this ignorance, then we will block the progression of all of the links of interdependence and be able to free ourselves from all of these sufferings. So how is it that we block this ignorance? How is it that we what are the steps that we go through in order to block this ignorance? Well, in the tradition of the secret mantra Vajrayana, the main way that we do it is by doing the meditation of the secret, through following the instructions on the meditation of the secret mantra. And in these, there are in general 2 different types of instructions. There are the instructions of the creation phase and the instructions of the deity, of the completion phase. For the instructions of the completion of the creation phase, the instructions of the creation phase are mainly on how to visualize yourself as a deity. And these are given primarily as a way to strengthen our completion stage, in order to have the strong completion stage meditation. So we follow, by following the instructions of the creation stage, we develop the strong deep holding, the strong samadhi, the strong deep holding that allows us to develop the development stage. But it is the development stage, that allows us to, we follow the instructions it allows us to develop the strong deep holding that allows us to develop the completion phase. And it is this completion phase that is primarily what the instructions of the secret mantra Vajrayana are concerned with. The instructions of the Great Seal, the instructions of the Great Perfectioner, Dzogchen, are primarily concerned with the practice of the completion phase here. And so for developing this, and in the completion phase, what we are primarily trying to do is to reverse the delusion about the unelaborate, reverse the delusion about emptiness. And we also want to reverse the delusion about the Buddha nature. And the way that we primarily do this is we first do listening and studying. And so we listen and study, we do listening, we read all that we can. We read as many books, we request as many teachings and attend as many teachings as we can. And through this, we come to understand the empty nature of all phenomena. And through this understanding of the empty nature of all, and come to a good, certain recognition of this empty nature of all phenomena. We also come to understand through this the reason that there is a Buddha nature, the reasons for there being the clear wisdom aspect. And through understanding this, we develop confidence for it. Then we use this understanding. You might ask, is such an understanding enough? It is not enough. We also need to meditate upon this. But it is this understanding that we develop through listening and contemplation that we use as the basis for a meditation in the secret mantra.
Tene dhatige tanda chitanga keprasa ne thula lapale yiba tendela kepala lapate hubarela tene tere te ngadu chuntin te somniona gomte sijanarona.
And it is by meditating upon it is by doing this meditation that we are able to block the four types of delusion that we have discussed. And so it is therefore, so that is the reason why we do that meditation, in order to block the link of ignorance, which then blocks the entire cycle of interdependence in samsara. So that completes the discussion of interdependence. Among the four different types, among the 6 ways of being skillful in the treatise, this covers the 4th of these types, the skill in interdependence. We will leave our Dharma session here for this morning, and we will do a little bit of meditation.
Amen.